Hello, I'm William Collins and I'm here with Anne O'Regan. Now, Anne is a trustee and the vice chair of the Welsh charity FNF Both Parents Matter Cymru. The main activity of that charity is to support non-resident parents, particularly in issues about children and contact. But the charity also provides a specialist service to male victims of domestic abuse. That's not the only charity that Anne is involved with, and perhaps she'll tell us a little bit about the other ones as well. But as far as this interview is concerned, the most important thing is that Anne is a passionate advocate for men and boys here in South Wales particularly. So, Anne, thank you for sparing us some time this morning. Perhaps I can start off with a political question, because many people that do advocate for men and boys get accused of being a far-right winger. Are you a far-right winger, Anne?
That's a very interesting question, William, because I'm a member of the Labour Party. I've been a member of the Labour Party for a long time. But I can understand where you're coming from. I've been a delegate in many a feminist organised conference, and being the only one that would stand up and talk about men and boys issues, I've been called a few things, but brave being one of them. I've never heard them call me far right as yet. My husband reckons my politics may be centre-left.
Very good. Now, let's get down to the charity, BPM Cymru, as we call it for short. Can you tell me what... well, let's start off with the service users, shall we? What are the service users typically of that charity?
Typically men. Typically fathers, married fathers. We get some grandmothers, we get some mothers, but it's mostly men that come to our charity.
And what do you personally do? What is your role in the charity, and what is the charity's role as a whole in terms of supporting those men?
Well, my role, I'm an emotional support volunteer, or as a buddy as we call it now. I've been that for quite some time. I've sort of helped to facilitate the solicitor when they want to see the solicitor. But the emotional support side of it is when they come in, I meet and greet, register them. And once then we've got a few minutes, I try and talk to them, try and give them confidence to share their story if they can. Sometimes they're in such a state they can't even attend the full meeting, that they need to stay outside that. So it's we get them service users that are angry, that are emotionally wrecked, that are just so very sad and very desperate.
What's causing this reaction in these men?
Well, I think that the system is failing. The system is failing badly. I mean, they first when they separate, I think it comes as a complete shock to them that they can be denied contact with the children that they love. They try so many things. They try mediation, and mediation is often refused by the other partner, and they try family members. They come to us usually when they've exhausted all other avenues, and which is sad, because it would be good really to get them a lot earlier, so we can make them more resilient and I think the professionals, once CAFCAS, social workers get involved, it's really disturbing on how they. Initially I thought like CAFCAS were there to sort of fact find and make sure that the children are safe. But the meetings that I've sat in on don't come over like that at all.
So for the sake of viewers that aren't immersed in these issues, CAFCAS, what's that?
Children and Family Court Advisory Services. So it's they initially, once they make an application to family court, they will contact both parents. It's usually the resident parent that they go to first. So they come to interview the non-resident parent with preconceived ideas. I from my opinion, and I've sat in on a few. So it's not a good start for the non-resident parent.
So we'll come back to the sort of services, but in terms of the operation of BPM Cymru, what services and support are offered by the charity to these men?
Well, we offer an awful lot of support. We've got a drop-in service for male victims of domestic abuse. That's one of them. We can make applications for legal aid if they fit the category. We emotionally support them. We monitor their well-being, and they're given a contact that they can ring, and we can check on them.
That's what you meant by the buddy scheme.
Yeah, the buddy scheme. Yeah. I mean, it used to be called just emotional support, and now we're calling it the buddy scheme. And so many of these men are self-harming. I'd say that they're in such a state, they're so desperate to see their children. They are threatening. They're threatening themselves. It's awful. It's
how important would you say the emotional support element is, and what sort of state are they in?
Terrible state. I mean, we've seen. I remember one of the meetings where there was a soldier came in with his mother. His mother was smaller. He was about 6'6", very, very well, and he was sobbing. His mother was holding him. He was absolutely sobbing. I mean, it was just trying. I had to move him away from the group. I had to get a regional manager to go in initially. And we see people like that. We've seen people in all emotional states, and some very, very angry with. They just cannot believe how the system is set against them having contact with their own children that they love very much.
And how does that process work? How is the system set against them?
It's well, as I said, I think from the initial, from that first meeting, I just with CAFCAS, I just wish I could sit in on every one of them. Because the service users are very, very emotional. They offer far too much, far too much. They're given a question and they'll go on and on and on, and sometimes incriminate themselves, which I think, whoa, please stop now. I mean, it's not. They ask very, very leading questions, how many units you drink in a week,
This is what CAFCAS says, is it?
I mean, have you ever smoked weed and things, and I mean, I would say, is this relevant? Where are we going? I think some of our service users need training before they have their first meeting, or certainly need advocacy, before that, that first meeting.
Are these professional social workers we're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And are these exchanges recorded in any way?
Oh, that's a huge topic. I'm absolutely furious because I've attended so many, and the first thing they say is, "Are you recording this meeting?" They certainly frown upon any form of recording. There is no transparency. There is no accountability, because I've sat in a meeting and listened to it all, and then I've seen the report, and the report is nothing like what was said in the meeting. I mean, some of the reports I find the language they use is extremely offensive. I mean, I can give you an example of that. One of our service users that I've been very close to, I've worked with a long time then, had supervised contact with his 4-year-old daughter, and it was she had a packet of quavers, these soft crisps, and she dropped one on the floor in the room, and he said to her, "Oh, that's dirty," but before he could get to her, she picked it up and she ate it. And in the report, it was he allowed her to eat off the floor like a dog. And that, I complained about the offensive language, and it's just continued, and it's lifted from one report to another. It's not taken out. I said, do you realise how dogs eat off the floor? They don't pick it up with their fingers. This is not, but it's still left in the report. And I mean, it's no wonder there's no trust there between the service user and the social worker when they use language like that for something which is very, very normal and natural for a 4-year-old child to do. And even though Dad said it was dirty, he couldn't get there. He couldn't quite get there in time.
Are these interviews conducted with just one parent or with both parents present?
Oh, just one, yeah. This was a supervised contact that I'm talking about there, but the parents are separate when CAFCAS come out. So they I believe, always interview the resident parent first, and then they come to the non-resident parent.
Have you ever been present at an interview of the resident parent?
No.
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 So we don't know how that one goes.
No.
And how long have you been involved in these issues? How long does your contact with the charity go back?
It's about 11 years now, my contact with the charity, but it was very much initially it was very much attending meetings, and the emotional support things started, even though I was emotionally supporting a lot of the service users. We didn't have a title for it. It's just evolved to that position, but it was me maybe getting a venue, and at the Cardiff meeting, the venue I've organised, and making sure we got tea and coffee, and making sure we run in the solicitor as it should be run.
So did it start off with just Cardiff, because it's all over Wales now, isn't it?
No, it was just Cardiff and Bridgend. I've been involved with for quite some time, but I think there's 11 or 12, isn't there, all over Wales?
Yeah, when lockdown ends anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that goes back 11 years, contact with the charity, but what prompted you to get involved with that sort of work in the first place, even going back to 11 years? I
had an interest, first of all, around issues with male victims of domestic abuse because of my union work, and realising that there wasn't support for victims of domestic abuse.
What was your union work? I don't think we've mentioned that.
I was an equalities officer for a trade union. I was an elected equalities officer for a trade union in the health sector. Right. So it was basically representing people on disciplinaries, grievances, sickness, and my biggest role was representing women on work-life balance issues, because most women choose to work part-time and most men work full-time. But it's something I'd done, but I represented some very complex cases on equality issues, around that time.
And did that lead you to any, in the context of work, what sort of work area was it? Was the union involved with? Hospitals, yeah, okay. Yeah. So were there any sort of gender issues there, or?
Well, yeah. Every 4 years, the health board has to come up with their equality objectives. And a few years back, they came up with the gender pay gap was one of the 4 equality objectives. Now, this is relevant to the health service. So when I questioned the employed equalities officer on this, I said, how have we got the gender pay gap on here? And he said, well, it's we did a staff survey. And I said, yeah. And what was the question? Do you think the gender pay gap's important? Well, of course, everybody thinks the gender pay gap's important, so they, they tick the box. So because they had so many ticks, so I mean, if you ask the question the right way, you're going to get the answer you want, aren't you?
Absolutely.
I mean, we've had Agenda for Change is the pay system that that's been enforced for many years now in the health service. And if you're a band 5, whether you're male or female, you are is pro rata. You get exactly the same money. And of course, women are overrepresented in every area. I think there's a bit of a debate about consultants, but every other area, and even now in Cardiff, the board is predominantly male.
So female, you mean?
Female, sorry, female, yeah. So it's they're overrepresented, and yet they're saying, and women make these choices, and they are supported to make these choices, but yet they say it's a gender pay gap. It's
what era are we talking about now when they first started talking about the gender pay gap? Is this when you were still involved with the union?
This last time, this was about 4 years ago. 4 years ago, but because of the other organisations I'm involved with, and I think I've mentioned Diverse Cymru, this is where people with protected characteristics then can get their voices heard. And I fit the category because I'm a woman and because of my age. So I get in there, and it's good. It's a good because they get speakers that you're allowed to question, and one of them was the Equalities Officer from the Health Board.
So this is Diversity Wales, is it?
Diverse Cymru is called.
Cymru.
Diverse Cymru.
Yeah. So perhaps we just go. We've deviated from where we were, but I'll come back to that. Perhaps we just go off into your other charity involvements, and not just charities, but the other sort of bodies like Diverse Cymru that you're involved with. Can you give us a quick summary of those interests?
Yeah, Action in Cairo Neely, ACE. I'm a trustee there as well.
And what's their work?
They health and well-being, community cohesion. They've done a wonderful work during the lockdown. I mean, they've been very supportive of people that have been isolating. They run courses, and they try and get people into employment. They got advice on benefits, utilities. It's a wonderful organisation. I'm proud to be part of it. It really is pulling the community, working well with the community, consulting the community, and really sort of pulling them together. And
that's very local, I know. It's just this area in Cardiff.
Yeah, Cairo and Neely. Yeah. And we're fortunate enough to be able to use their building for our Both Parents Matter meetings as well.
Right.
So that's ACE. I'm a co-opted member of the Community Health Council, which my interests have been in health for a long time. So we pay visits. We are the patient's voice, really. Pay visits to surgeries, dentists, anything to do with the NHS. Get people's opinions on what the service was like, what their treatment was like. Were they happy with everything? So we collect data, feedback. We consulted on new services that could be started. And it's again that's a very good opportunity to get your voice heard, because I keep saying, what about funding for men? What about
Do you see gender issues in that context?
Yeah, health-wise, yeah. I mean, we know that more men die of prostate cancer than women of breast cancer. Yet the funding is way tipped over to towards women. It's.
And you're also involved in something called elder abuse, aren't you?
Yeah, I sit on the Elder Abuse Forum, and this again is an opportunity. The first time I sat around the table, I hardly heard men mentioned at all. It was all about the victimhood of women, and what Women's Aid have run campaign after campaign on elderly women and how they have difficulty accessing services, but we don't hear anything about men. But now we do. It's changing, and it's and in the last meeting, it was very good to have a lady that I was looking at her video last night, Sally.
Yes.
She
yes.
was
This is Sally Ann Burris.
That's
yeah.
right, yeah. She attended this forum as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually had someone else who was speaking on, what about men?
Mm.
Where do they go? If they disclose that they're victims of older men, they're not believed. So where do they go? How can they ring the helpline when everything on the helpline is regarding women?
Mm.
It's not welcoming to men. They're not trusting the service that they're seeing.
Mm.
So it's and with the Elder Abuse Forum, it's with a few of the forums, it's given me access to the Older Persons Commissioner. So it's again an open door for me then.
So have you got any first-hand experience of elderly men that are subject to abuse?
Yeah. I'm actually looking out for two of them at the moment. One of them is a service user of Both Parents Matter, and the other one I got to know via a friend who was being abused by his daughter, who was actually been sofa surfing for over a year. 78, he's got health problems, and we've now got him settled in a flat, and things are really changing for him, and he's absolutely overwhelmed, by his situation at the moment. But I see it quite a lot.
Mm.
I mean, because we talk about domestic abuse, we think about domestic abuse then as just being partner abuse, but it's not. No, it's any member of the family can be abusive. It can be your son, your daughter, it can be your grandmother, it can be any member of the family. But we've just focused on partner abuse.
Mm. Yeah. Well, it's distressing that elderly people are subject to the same problems and the same discrimination as younger people.
Absolutely.
Perhaps we can come back to how you got involved. I mean, we detoured onto your history of being a equalities officer in the union, so you've clearly had a professional interest in equalities for a long time. But how did you get involved, and medical issues as well, goes back a long time. But how did you get involved, or how did your interest start, specifically in men and boys and specifically in issues about parental separation?
I think that was when my son and his wife split up. It was, that it's very personal. It's they were married for 15 years, 3 children, and I just couldn't believe the outcome there. I couldn't believe how quickly alienation could happen. I mean, they used to stay here all the time.
These are your grandchildren?
My grandchildren, yeah. I would look after them for mum and dad to work. They'd holiday with us. They never asked to go home. They were absolutely, really, really happy here.
Three children, did you?
Three children, yeah. They split up. There was a bit of discussion. First of all, she came, my son came, and then they decided that they'd try again, and it didn't work. And I kept saying to them, now whatever happens, whatever you decide, the children must come first. These children must know that they're loved by everyone. And I mean, I really spent some time trying to enforce this. Children, they must know that they're loved and cared for by everyone. And there was a bit of a kickback from the children initially, within the first couple of weeks. No, we want to see Dad. We want to see, we want to. But after, I would say, maybe even a month, there was a complete change of character in those children. They were, well, they were loving, caring, respectful. I was so proud of them. Beautiful children that I was very, very proud of. And then they hated, they were abusive, but they were rewarded for being abusive. I mean, they stopped using, they didn't call me Nan anymore. They called me my first name. If there was ever a conversation, if ever, maybe that would be the phone, and they were calling my son by his first name, and that happened within weeks. And I mean, really, sort of, it was just unbelievable that children could change that quickly. And I do know it's, you know, they have to protect themselves. They have to, you know, think I've got to live with this, so I've got to be compliant.
Had you come across alienation before this?
No.
You didn't know what it was at that time?
No, not at all. I mean, I was divorced. I had 3 children, but my children were older when we separated. But my children continued seeing their dad, and which I'm very grateful for, because we got mutual grandchildren, and there isn't an issue if we ever if we ever meet up for birthdays or anything like that. It's not a problem. But no, I've never witnessed it before. And I mean, it's not just us, it's the whole of the paternal family don't see those children, and some of the maternal family. His sister doesn't see the children, because his sister have said, what you're doing to these children is harming them. They need their father in their lives. They need, you know.
How long ago was this?
This is about 11 years now.
So how old are the children now?
They're 22, 20 and 16 now.
Okay,
yeah.
So there's one still a child. And do you have any relationship with them now?
No. No, it got to a stage where I was told that they wouldn't accept presents from me anymore. They certainly wouldn't see me. They wouldn't accept presents. They would accept money. And then I was sending cards, and I was told by my eldest granddaughter that if I continued telling her how much, in these cards, how much I loved and missed them, that she was going to seek legal advice for harassment. So that, so that's how bad it gets. I mean, it's just, I mean, this is when I started. I mean, I got very, very low. It was just because they were a massive part of my life, of our lives. And I got very low. And because I was quite active within the community, I rang quite a few different people, Kafkas included. You know, what can I do? I'm just prevented from seeing my grandchildren. They weren't a lot of help. So eventually I spoke to Both Parents Matter, and it was a local counsellor guided me, you know, to them. And that's what I've been ever since. And I'm really glad that I found them, because I think with me helping other people in the way that I do, with emotional support, helps me as well. Because it is a grieving process. You never forget. I mean, as a grandmother, it's a bit of a double whammy. I was very, very concerned about my son's welfare. He was grieving for his children. And had no control. The courts take absolute control. It's just awful. I mean, he's a healthcare professional. No safeguarding issues at all, and he was told that he could only have indirect contact with his youngest child. And indirect contact means he can write to her. Yeah. And of course, he would never know whether she got the letter. And
did that ever change, or did it remain?
It's remained much the same. There's been a couple of episodes where she's asked or contacted him. She was poorly at one time and wanted to see her dad, and he did. And then she asked, could she meet him at school, and there was someone there from the pastoral team at the school to supervise. And
this is only one of the children.
This is the youngest one.
The youngest one.
The youngest one, yeah. But the eldest one is at a work placement in the area that my son works. And whilst she had the work placement, was absolutely fine and dad and, you know, polite, and as soon as she finished it, she was back to the way she was.
Do you see your experience reflected in the service users
Absolutely,
of BPM?
absolutely, especially grandparents, because you know, grandmother, and it's usually grandmothers. We do get a couple of granddads, but it's mostly grandmothers come. And yeah, my experience and the experience of my son, I see, you know, reflected regularly. I mean, when I think it can't get any worse, it does. I've always got tissues at the ready in all the meetings I go to, you know, because it, you know, it's terrible. I mean, men are so vulnerable these days to malicious allegations. And of course, it only needs an allegation. I mean, the Me Too movement has just moved it on that massive stage further, that it, you know, if it's a sexual allegation, my God, it's, you know, it's just so worrying. And, you know, I mean, I've got sons, I've got grandsons, that I'm just very, very concerned about the way the world is going, that, you know, that men are really, well, they're not in with a chance. I mean, if an allegation is made, they have to prove their innocence. It's not, you know, it's
What
awful.
proportion of service users of BPM are subject to allegations, do you think?
Most of them, I'd say. Most of them, because of course is a gateway to legal aid for women. Domestic abuse is a gateway to legal aid. And
Do you want to expand on that a little for people?
Yeah, so it's, if they're a victim of domestic abuse, you know, they're much more likely, and it's evidence then, and Women's Aid can evidence, you know, that they're a victim. So all they got to do is go to Women's Aid and say, yeah, is it me, you know? Well, that's no investigation. Well, family courts are based on probability anyway. You know, it's not fact. It's not, you know, it's all based on probability. So it's yeah, they can go to their GP, they can go to a nurse, they can go to as I said, Women's Aid, or any of the many sister charities Women's Aid have got, and get that evidence letter.
Yeah, this is the so-called domestic violence evidence gateway, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
Because the legal aid was withdrawn from civil cases in 2013, but this gateway, if you allege domestic violence.
Yeah, and it's just alleged, you know, and that's it. I mean, I don't think there are any winners in family court, and certainly children are not. You know, it's just it really lets children down badly. You know, the system is really, really failing.
But the primary legal duty of the family courts is to put the best interest of the child first and make their interest paramount.
I mean, even their wishes and feelings reports. I mean, it's, you know, I've read them, and my God, it's upset me so much to read those wishes and feelings reports, because those children are using words that they would never normally use. It's been written for them, basically. They've been really guided through it, and it's you know, is it their wishes and feelings? No, it's not their wishes and feelings, you know. And I mean, it's just, as I said, the system is failing badly.
Yeah, you mentioned sitting in on meetings with CAFCAS. Can we just return briefly to statutory services then generally, and what role they play in this whole process?
Well, CAFCAS, I've sat in with social workers as well. I've gone to LAC meetings, which is looked after child meetings, so it means the child is in foster care or whatever. And again, those meetings are, you know, I mean, it's they're not helpful. It's always challenging the non-resident parent. They should be there the LAC meetings are to get the non-resident parent up to speed with the development of the child, with what's happening, where they are education-wise and health-wise and all that, and the ones that I've sat in are not like that at all. It's I mean, I've got one service user that's got a looked after child, and it was last January that he had any contact at all.
How did he end up being looked after? I mean, this usual scenario is there's a resident parent and a non-resident parent, and yet how did he go from that to being a looked after child?
Right. Well, this particular service user, the mother of his child was mentally ill, and seriously mentally ill, and has a history of mental illness during pre and postnatally then. And she assaulted him, which is in the court records. I've seen it, and he tried to pull away and she fell back and cut her head, so he ended up being deemed the perpetrator of domestic abuse. She was extremely vulnerable because of a mental health condition, and they ended up then taking the child into care.
Was the child placed with the mother initially in that case?
Yeah, the child was with the mother. The father was made to move out, and he was the main support for the mother. In Wales, we haven't got a mother and baby unit in Wales, which is absolutely shocking, because 1 in 5 women suffer mental health problems in pregnancy. And 2013 they closed the mother and baby unit, and we haven't had one open since. There's plans.
There's plans at the moment,
There's
isn't there?
plans
We'll not go there. That'll
No.
be a whole different interview.
Exactly. There's plans at the moment, but again, it's worrying. So, I mean, the previous pregnancy, she was in a mother and baby unit, kept the child and recovered and became okay. And because the facility wasn't there, they removed the child. And
so the child, have I got this right then? This scenario, this particular case, they removed from a mother who was struggling for various mental health reasons. They removed from her actual real support, which was her partner.
Yeah.
And having removed the partner so that she could no longer cope, they then put the child in care.
That's right. Yeah. So
words fail me.
mother and father now have contact, supervised contact. It should have been every 3 months, I think, but because of COVID, it's not.
Is this a rare scenario, you think?
I don't think so. I mean, I've witnessed a child being taken, and I'm still reeling from it. I witnessed a child being taken 10 o'clock at night, taken 4 hours away in a car with 2 social workers. The grandmother screaming. The father the day before had a safeguarding check by local authorities, and he was fine. But the court in Surrey had made a decision to take this child. The child was taken by 2 social workers 10 o'clock at night. The child had to be woken up. And as they were leaving, the grandmother said, oh, don't forget her medicine. Those 2 social workers were taking that child 4 hours away in a car and didn't know whether she had a medical condition or not.
Shocking.
And I'm still reeling from that. I mean, I said, can't you wait somewhere till the morning? Can't we, I said, you don't know if she's diabetic, epileptic, you don't know anything about this child. No, the court has said, and this is what we do. And that's how cruel the system is.
Well, I know the number of children being taken into care in England and Wales is soaring.
It's more in Wales, isn't it?
I think both, the whole of the UK really. I think it's increasing.
Right.
So, you've been involved in these things for quite a while. Do you think they're getting better or worse?
That's really difficult to say, because of course I'm seeing the worst of it because of the nature of what we do, and family courts are secret, and so we don't know the outcomes. We don't know if there are good outcomes. I doubt it. you know, getting to family court is, you know, there's a lot of conflict before you get there. And one person's rewarded with the children by the sound most of the time. And of course child arrangements orders are not enforced, or very rarely enforced. So even if you've got a child arrangement order, is it worth the paper it's written on? You know?
Do you think the ordinary man and woman in the street that haven't themselves been through separation are aware of these issues?
No, I don't. I really don't, because I had no idea until my son, no idea. And I can, you know, when we talk about parental alienation, it's you explain it to people, and somebody always knows someone that's been through it. You know, when you talk it through. Oh yeah, my cousin went through that. You know, I mean, I think it's. Is it getting worse? I think it's happening more often because more couples are splitting up. You know, divorce rates are, so it's not improving, and I think the system is deteriorating. It's overloaded. It's not, you know, it's.
What would you say to people who argue that there's no such thing as parental alienation, and it's actually just a ruse used by abusive fathers to detract, deflect attention from their own abusive behaviour?
There's a lot I'd like to say, but I can't say. This, you know, I mean, I've seen this, you know, coming from Women's Aid and sister organisations, you know, and but what about people like me? What about the mothers that it's happening to? It's not anything to do with gender. It's a behaviour. It's a behaviour that, you know, people use and weaponise their children and harm their children. I mean, if you look at the adverse childhood experiences, you know, this is way up there on the scale. You know, about, you know, both parents not being involved in their lives, and I mean, I'm messing with their minds, as I say, when they taught to love and respect, and then rewarded for the absolute opposite. It must be, their poor little minds must be just.
Do you think it has a long-term effect on them?
Oh, it definitely does. Definitely does. I know, personally, it definitely does. You know, it's.
Well, we've been talking for quite a while, but there's one other topic that we haven't addressed, which you might like to tell us something about. That's in 2017, with the assistance of your then Assembly member, you made a complaint to the EHRC, the Equalities and Human Rights Commission.
I did.
Can you tell us something about that?
Right. First of all, my AM is the First Minister, is Mark Drakeford.
Although he wasn't at that time, was he?
No. Oh, was he? No.
I think it was just before, yeah.
Right, you know, he was finance then. It was, yeah. So yeah, I went along, and it's because I was supporting a service user one day, and he was very traumatised by what had happened to him, and I rang the Live Fear Free helpline. And the lady that answered the phone to me, I said, oh, first of all, I'm ringing on behalf of a man. He's with me now, but he's very traumatised, and he wants, you know, he'd like some advice. And she said, oh, a man? I said, yes. I said, you do support men? Oh, just a minute, she said.
This is the Live Fear Free. Don't they? Aren't they behind the Dean project?
Well, Safer Wales.
Safer Wales, yeah.
So this is Women's Aid, I think, is Live Fear Free.
Right, sorry, yes, so I'm getting the two confused.
So she said, oh, just a minute, I need to go and check with my line manager. So she comes back and she said, yeah, we actually do support men. I said, great, okay. So I said, can you tell me then, do you send them to the Dean project? Where do you send? Oh, just a minute, I need to speak to my line manager. So off she trots again. So she comes back. My line manager said the man needs to speak for himself, she said. And I said, what? I said, he's extremely emotional. And I said, so you can't help by speaking to me? No. So I went to a conference and I relayed this. I was sat in the front, ready to, ready to get a question answered.
What conference is it?
This was, could have been the Elder Abuse Conference.
Yeah, okay.
Because as I said, the chair was very good at pulling me in to ask questions. So I relayed this in the, or it must have been somebody new on the phones. It must, it must have been. And so it went, yeah, it went on from there, and I can't, where were we going then? On 2017. So I realised then that men weren't being supported in the right way, and so went to Mark Drakeford and said, look, I'm very concerned that women are being believed and men are not.
What happens when a man phones the Dean Project? Because the Dean Project is the Welsh, or at least the Cardiff, service for male victims of domestic abuse. At least notionally it is.
It is. Yeah.
What happens when a man phones them? Does he get the same reception? Or
no, there's a tick list then. So they go through a questionnaire, and if you get so many ticks in the one column, then you are actually posing as a victim.
This is the so-called respect toolkit for use with male victims.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So you could ring as a victim, but you could end up as the perpetrator, because I mean, these things are have you ever retaliated? Have you ever raised your voice? Things like that.
Could it possibly be turned around to be your fault?
Absolutely. Is there any way we can do this?
Yeah.
But saying that, I've gone to the Dean Project with a service user, and there was a lady there this time who said, I'm supposed to do this, but I'm not going to do it. This man was already deemed high risk, at risk anyway. So I went to Mark Drakeford with all this information, and he said, right. He said, I said, this is discrimination. I said, I've looked at the, the equalities and human rights policies and protocols, and this is discrimination.
And of course, Mark Drakeford would be aware of your background as an equalities officer in a union and a long-term Labour Party member, and of course he's Labour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he wrote then to the commission. And what they came back with, first of all, was a gift. I mean, I just absolutely loved it, because I don't think you've mentioned this before. It came back saying it is essential to screen men because of statistical probability. You haven't seen that document?
I don't think I've seen that one.
So this was the first one that came back, and I thought, what a gift! This was I was really over the moon with this. So. I went back to Mark. I said, since when then has the Equalities and Human Rights, started supporting the majority, not the
It's incredible. It's incredible, isn't it? It's unbelievable.
Not the minority.
I mean, it's supposed to be about supporting minorities, if anything.
Exactly. So what's happening here, Mark? Yeah. You've looked at the policies, and this is what they've put.
Yeah.
He said, oh God, and he was really taken back. I said, so. So again, he wrote, and this time it was that I needed a meeting with him, and I was introduced to the head of policy at the time, and sat down with her and spent nearly 2 hours with her going through all this. Yeah, but Anne, it is, they are the. I said, no, victims are victims. Now they all feel pain, they all bleed, they all feel shame. So telling. So, right, okay, right, I've noted down what you said, and I'll take this back to the legal department. So it goes back, and it was months, and I'm on the case all the time, because I'm a bit like that. I don't let things go. So kept ringing, where are we, what's the response? So eventually, I think Mark wrote again, because I said, look, I'm not getting anything from them. Yeah. So I think he prompted them again. Yeah. So it was, they came back with then, this is far too complex for our legal department to deal with. So we are going to commission a barrister, an expert barrister on human rights. So they did, but they wouldn't let me present my case. I didn't know who the barrister was. I didn't know what case that they were going to present, what they were going to offer to him or her to look at. So I went back to Mark Drakeford again. I said, this is ridiculous. I can't present a case when I don't know what they're presenting. So he wrote to them again, and I was allowed to see what they were presenting. So in the end, the barrister came back and said, yes, it is direct discrimination. It is. But then nothing's changed, because they've then sort of said that, because of course I was very aware, because I sit on lots and lots of different groups, and said, but that is direct discrimination now to do that, And they came back and said if it was a single sex service, it was okay not to believe men, really.
Yeah. So you can't any given service, if it addresses both male and female victims, does, according to that ruling, have to treat them equally. Or otherwise they'd be risking, a case against them under the Equalities Act 2010. But you can wriggle out of that if you're a single sex service provider, and two different service providers, one providing services to men, one providing services to women, need not deploy the same process. So the Dean project, only dealing with men, can deploy the toolkit for use with male victims, i.e. 17 questions asking, are you really the perpetrator? But Women's Aid and other women's services can just believe the victim, and that is deemed at the present time to be legal.
Absolutely, and it's shocking, and I'm still looking at another angle to attack it from, but I haven't come up with anything just yet, because I'm sure it is still discrimination, because victims are victims, it's
And we've been going quite a long time, so I think we better bring it to an end, but it's been a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm sure the viewers will find what you have to say very enlightening and harrowing, but enlightening. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I would like to say just one more thing, is that I've had no formal training really. I mean, I've done a little bit of equalities work with Unison, but my first meeting was with the then First Minister politically, that was Rhodri Morgan, and it was over somebody that had been trafficked here and left in the sticks, and he eventually broke into a house because he was hungry. So I thought, my God, this man is a victim. He's not. He was in prison. Nobody could understand. He was Moroccan, and he spoke Berber, and nobody could understand what he was speaking. So I was on the case there. So I went to Rhodri Morgan, and I sat down with him and sort of talked him through it. And he said, right, what do you want me to do? I said, well, I was hoping that you would come up with something here, So he did. He wrote to the Refugee Council and all this, and done some work. And from then on, I've had no issues going to see any member, MP, AM, whatever. They're there to work for you, and they're there to write for you, to write on behalf of you as your constituent. Make them work for you. I mean, it's, if I can get the Equalities and Human Rights Commission to step down on an issue, anybody can. Anybody can do that. Especially women. It's so much easier for women to fight men and boys issues, and it would be good to see a lot more women involved in this.
I think we're beginning to see just that. I mean, you mentioned Sally Ann Burris, and there's many others. So
I think so.
Thank you again for your time. That's a good note on which to end, I think.
Thank you.